All right, let's talk about the Big Ten storylines here. And I need to collect the Oregon Maryland final score. I know Penn State was running away from Washington early, but really the story here with regards to uh, playoff interest is Indiana. They hang on over Michigan, 20-15. The Hoosiers could not move the ball at all. Garrett, you texted at one point, like late in the fourth, Indiana didn't even have positive yards gained against the Wolverines. Credit to Michigan for figuring something out. But guys, the storyline for me was Sharon Moore continues to mismanage the game for Michigan. They had a chance late to get a stop, to get the ball back. And I know their offense hadn't done anything, but what little they had done right was done in the second half. He mismanages calling the timeouts. He lets like 30 seconds tick off before using his first timeout. He's got all three, and even the broadcast was kind of giving him grief for that. For Indiana, it's a little bit of a clunker, maybe. But you do pay it off. You're 10-0 for the first time in program history, first time to 10 wins. Garrett, contender or pretender for Indiana?
I want to say contender, but they got to show me a little bit more. I think this Michigan team is playing better down the stretch. They just keep getting bad results, and they just keep not quite figuring it out. This is not the Michigan team of last year, right? They've lost a lot of players. Obviously, we've documented that very well, but they've been playing a little bit better. And if you've watched their games, they're a lot more competitive on the field than they had been at the beginning of the season. They just don't have it all together yet. And that's why some of these results keep happening. So I'm not necessarily disappointed in Indiana. I wasn't shocked that they came out and struggled in the second half because Michigan's been quietly really good, on defense and especially making adjustments late in games. So I'm not necessarily worried about Indiana. Want to see how they come out against Ohio State. I'm not worried about them yet. You're allowed to have your one off game, right? This is what I talk about. If you're a contender, if you're in that seat, you can have an off game, right? This wasn't Curtis Rourke's best game by any standards. They didn't run the ball very well by any standards. So yeah, like have your off game, have your game where you didn't show up, and bounce back, right? You got to come back and bounce back quick because you're playing Ohio State. But if they can figure that out, maybe keep it close, stay in that game, then yeah, I think Indiana can compete this year.
Indiana now has Ohio State right in front of them. That's their next game. That will be the game of the Big Ten, and that's in 2 weeks' time. They get a bye week to prepare for it, which is massive. And then they'll play Purdue to end the season. Trey, I'll ask you the same question. Curtis Rourke has played well this season. Defensive adjustments got to him in the second half today. Indiana's defense, though, as their radio broadcast said late in the fourth quarter, defense kind of won you the game. Is Indiana a complete enough team to challenge Ohio State, maybe even beat Ohio State, and get to Indianapolis and play for a Big Ten championship?
I think it's going to be a close game. I really do. I don't know how you could look at unless you're just a guy that only looks at recruiting rankings and star power, right? I don't know how you can look at what they've done on the field and say that Ohio State's just going to blow Indiana out of the water in 2 weeks. Yes, it's in Columbus. Yes, it seems like most of Indiana's bigger games have been at home, but I mean, they just seem to be a team that's playing much better than the sum of their parts right now. Credit that to coaching, credit that to whatever it is, but I think it's going to be a good, hard-fought game. And if you lose by a score or less in Columbus and you're 11-1 and left out of the Big Ten championship game, I don't see how you get left out of the playoff in that scenario.
Yeah, no. To me, you beat Purdue and you're in the playoff. I think Indiana can start dreaming about some plane tickets for sure. Elsewhere around the conference, Oregon and Maryland has gone final 39-18. Dillon Gabriel becomes the FBS's all-time passing leader in touchdowns. He actually throws to an offensive lineman to get that record, so congratulations to Dillon Gabriel. But it was a weird game for the Ducks. They were at home against Maryland. Gabriel doesn't even throw for 200 yards. Throws for 183, 3 touchdowns. The running game got going. They ran for $180. But I do wonder if has Oregon answered all of the questions that you guys had, whether it be preseason or throughout this season? Like, has Oregon checked all of the boxes for you to be the favorite for the national championship?
It's hard to say because I think they're doing more than enough to win these games. They're not exactly playing in close games.
Mm-hmm.
And they're kind of just vibing out there, right? Like we don't see their game. They're not featured on the big networks all the time because that's how it's going to be with these West Coast Big Ten teams. They're going to be the product of time slots and needing to be at a specific time slot. So not everyone's gotten to really see them, and they're kind of just vibing out there. Like they're not playing close games. They're not eking out wins. They're getting up by a lot of points, and Dylan Gabriel might throw a weird interception here or there, but they're getting up by a lot of points and then just kind of running out the clock and not really worrying about the flash of like a 60-0 score or something like that, like 39-18 in a conference game. Totally fine with the 21-point win and getting out of Dodge and keeping everybody healthy. And it's not sexy. It's not really headline grabbing, but it's the closest thing to a complete elite juggernaut that we have in college football this year.
I can say definitively yes. They're the best team right now in college football. Obviously, I think they've done everything to show that. And Trey, I love what you say about vibing. They're just not really trying all that hard. And we're talking about them like they went out there and put up a stinker. They came a point shy of 40. Like, when did 40 points become kind of a ho-hum day and just getting out of Dodge? Like, they put up 39 points, and they do that, not necessarily trying all that hard. They don't really throw the ball all over the yard. They a lot of run game, obviously. None of the numbers were spectacular necessarily. Defense looks pretty good, but like, I don't know when we, changed and called 40 points kind of ho-hum. When you're doing that and people are looking at you and saying, well, you win by 3 touchdowns and, you didn't even put up 40 points. You stopped at 39. When you start doing that, you're the best team in college football. And we're talking about you that way. Nobody else in college football has shown us anything close to that complete of an effort. And again, kind of just going back on some of their point totals, like they scored 39, 38, 38, 35, 32, 31, 34, 49, 37, and then 24 at the beginning of the year. They've put up 30 plus in every single game outside of the first game of the season. They've put up, 40 in one instance. They're just scoring. They're just doing good things. They're holding teams down. They're figuring it out on defense. They're the best team in college football. They should win the national championship this year.
Interesting. Okay, so I guess that's a great final question to ask. Garrett, you've got Oregon as your national championship favorite?
Yeah, I would put Oregon in the driver's seat right now because they've already beaten Ohio State. Ohio State, I think, came with everything they had at them and couldn't get it done. I do think that Oregon would win that game again. I think that they'd win that game again if they played them again. I don't see anybody in the SEC being complete enough right now to be able to beat them. I think, Texas looks really good. Still not sure that they have a signature quality win against a top team. The Vanderbilt win, very good, but I still need to see them beat a really good team. Got a chance to do it at the end of the season against A&M. But I still am not convinced that anybody else in the SEC is really that complete. Tennessee can run the ball kind of up and down on them. A&M, we've seen them look pretty up and down this season. Take your pick around the country. Nobody in the Big 12 really scares me necessarily. Colorado looks better. BYU's in trouble right now as the third quarter is getting started. Nobody in the ACC really scares me. SMU might win that conference and get the bye. I don't think SMU can go up and compete with Oregon. So I think that this is a year where there's so much chaos. There's so many different moving pieces. There's so many, this coach is, first year coach, this quarterback's a new quarterback in a new system. There's this guy. And for all of that, Oregon seems the most stable to me. They seem to be getting the most stable results consistently. And I'm going to trust that on a playoff run.
Trey, what about you?
I can't disagree with anything Garrett said. It really is. They do seem to be the most complete and the most dominant team at this point in the season. Someone else could emerge and we could see somebody flip a switch, but we just haven't seen that yet. I'd keep an eye on Alabama. I'd keep an eye on Tennessee because they did lose to Arkansas, but they've found a way to grind out games and they might be the favorite in the SEC at this point. And I'd keep an eye on Ole Miss. I'd keep an eye on the Rebels if they can keep getting hot and keep that offense humming. They've got a defensive line that can cause a lot of problems for a lot of teams, but none of those teams is ready to challenge Oregon based on what we've seen on the field at this point. They have a lot of potential and they could get there, but Oregon, in my mind and for my money, is the favorite.
A really stout defense that can get to the quarterback. They're forcing turnovers. And then you combine what that offense can do. I do tend to agree. I think I'd like to see Ohio State get another shot at them. And I know that means that they've got to beat Indiana, and I'm not rooting against the Hoosiers, but I really do want to see another Oregon-Ohio State rematch.
Now, interesting idea. If Indiana beats Ohio State, I can't wait for that game in the Big Ten Championship. That'll be something to watch right there.
It would be tremendous. Absolutely. Absolute cinema, as the kids would say.
Gracious him. How about that?